What's wrong with that today?
You send an email into us, which you can do as well if you prefer email. The email address is radio@maximumvp.com. You can also call us when we're on the air live here in the studio. We're here every Monday from noon to 1 p.m. Eastern. The number here is 440-946-9468. Again, 440-946-WINT. If you have your own how question you'd like to pose for us here on the air, we can be happy to answer it for you. Or if you have something you'd like to add, and we have the how question we've been discussing here so far this morning, or I'm sorry, this afternoon, has been for Jim and Willoughby, which was, how do I know when it's time to split with my partner? And so, for him to kind of pose that question, he's been thinking about it for a while.
Had to be thinking about it for a while. That's the process.
Right.
You start thinking, and then those how questions. Well, how do I do this? How? So Jim hit it right, and worthy of kind of chatting about it today. And if you want to add your 2 cents, please do. I'm sure you've had a how question like that.
So we kind of left at a break. We were talking about the Jim Collins good to great thing in terms of somebody coming in and giving you a 2-week notice or saying that they're leaving, and would you A, be distraught by that or very upset about it, or B, would you be secretly relieved? And so if you're that B category, you're secretly relieved, it's time to kind of do something.
Absolutely.
Now, if it's A, now it doesn't mean that, if you're upset about it, doesn't mean that you may not want that person to go. It just means maybe you aren't ready for them to go yet. You may be upset because, oh, gee, I wish I'd known, had more time to prepare for it, versus not wanting them to go. So if you're at that point, and it happens a lot, and, as Jack mentioned before, we've been involved in a lot of situations like this where we've got partners where, from the outside, we're very unemotional, okay, as most people are, and they can see it clear as day. If you've got a friend who's in a relationship where you on the outside that this relationship is just doesn't have it, and you wonder why they haven't done anything about it. Well, again, it's very easy on the outside where you're unemotional, not involved, to be able to see it. When you're in it, and the longer you're in it, the more difficult it is to get out. And it's got to be pretty painful for you to make a move, right? The whole idea of, I know, what I've got here, at least the devil that you know is better than the devil that you don't know. And again, partnerships, we've had a great experience with partnerships. When partnerships work and work well, it's hard to be beat, right?
It's nothing better than that.
But if they go wrong, it can be very, very tough. And who's going to put that first thing down and say, okay, that's got to move, be able to move on. So
here you are thinking, day in, day out. You see this person, and the feeling doesn't get better. And here you are, the owner of the business. And you look around the room, and there's no one else to throw this kind of decision off on. You don't have a lot of employees. This negativity is growing. So one of the worst things to do is not make a decision and just live with it, because it starts to pull you down too, and people will notice. And you know what we're talking about. I mean, you've been, just about everyone in the world past 21 has been into situations that turn negative with people. But as a business owner, that's not necessarily what's best for the company, no matter how good this person is. The company is what you have to sort of filter out all the nonsense about and say, okay, me walking in here every day, getting negative, not liking Joe or Jane, and I'm not doing anything about it. The company itself starts to get infected with that, and other people see it, and they don't like it. That negativity, especially by the owner, it's a very powerful force that works against what you're trying to accomplish. So you got to make these decisions. Indecisions are really the worst thing that you can do in situations like this, because it doesn't get better. Even if you have intervention, which we don't believe in that stuff too much, kind of old thinking perhaps, but nonetheless pretty valid thinking based on our experience. So
usually one of the challenges that we've seen, Jack, is they aren't sure how to bring it up. Because again, if one person's thinking it, let's say you got partners, you have 2 partners there, it's rare that one is so off base from the other that one's thinking about it a lot and one's not. Usually they've got some thoughts about it. They just haven't maybe verbalized it to each other yet. So often where we come in is we start to kind of ask those questions. Well, maybe we'll hear from one side or the other side, or maybe we hear from both sides separately and realize, hey, these folks are kind of thinking the same way. They're both thinking, hey, this is not quite working right. We got to figure out ways to make it happen. So we'll bring them together and facilitate a discussion to kind of start that ball flowing, so to speak. And often just getting that first step down and kind of getting it out there. Getting out there on the table, start to kind of talk about it. Okay, so how do we fix what's going on here if it's fixable, if you can define what the problem is. You know, often the problem is, and we've seen this with partnerships, especially when you got family involved, is you've got maybe somebody who started or somebody who's involved in the business, and you bring somebody else in. Again, it could be a spouse. And you got a situation like this that we're dealing with right now. You got a spouse that was in, then left, and came back in, and the spouse is just not right for the role that's needed.
Yeah, the technical, the demeanor, a lot of characteristics don't fit.
So you get to the point where I say, okay, I have a spouse, so I have two partnerships there. All right, I've got my marriage partnership, and I have my business partnership, and while those are separate, they are tremendously now intertwined when it comes to the business. And so,
boy, we've seen a lot of extreme examples.
Oh yeah,
How about the vein popping?
So I was gonna get to that one. So, so you have a discussion. So we ask, okay, well, if you got to save these things, first of all, do you want to save the marriage? Okay, if you do, there's one. Okay, that's understand that. Okay, and do you want to save the partnership, the business partnership? Because often you can't save both. Sometimes you can, but sometimes you have to pick one versus the other.
Yeah, it depends on how deep it is. That's why indecisiveness is one of the worst things, because these things just get worse, and now it starts to cut to personal, and you just can't recover from many of those situations when you leave it fester.
Well, I think indecisiveness is one thing, but I think also just letting it fester without talking about it, or not, or if you try to bring it up without somebody else there to help facilitate a discussion, it's very tough because, again, it gets very emotional. And as things get emotional, we stop hearing each other. We don't communicate very well, or something I'm saying is heard differently because you're thinking of something that happened 6 years ago that has nothing to do with our discussion today, but you're hearing it through that lens. And okay, well, if somebody's there to kind of point out, hey, that's not what that person said, here's what they really said. So I think having somebody to help facilitate that kind of discussion who's objective is very, very helpful for this situation.
Yeah, even well-intentioned advice, things that are good, they just aren't communicated and received in the spirit that it's intended. Once you start to feel negative about somebody, it changes. Everything changes.
Right.
It's rare that you can keep going.
So if you have a case where you've got spouses that are going at each other in terms of the business, it can be very, very difficult because you have to try to separate the two. Because, again, usually if things aren't going well in the business, it's going to impact how you feel things are going in the marriage. Because all of a sudden, you're thinking 24/7 about business stuff. You may lose sight of what happened with you, as far as why you fell for each other in the first place. Usually it had nothing to do with the business. The business kind of usually comes along a little bit later, right? Or it's part of what it's going to be. So it's helping to kind of be able to see those things. And, Jack mentioned, we had a client years ago. He mentioned vein popping, where this was a couple that was their second marriage. They got into business together, and by the time we got involved in it, it was literally War of the Roses. That movie
boy,
with
perfect depiction.
Was it
Is there
Michael Douglas
and who?
Kathleen Turner? Yeah, right. And Danny DeVito was the attorney. But they
all
were.
All they needed was a chandelier. Yeah, that's all they needed. And
she says black, he says white, vice versa, and they'd come in, and it wasn't daily, but certainly weekly. There would be issues that would come up, and the vein popping you're talking about, Jack, with yelling about something that happened at home 3 years ago that had nothing to do with what's going on, and the employees feel awful. It's very uncomfortable.
Well, other tenants in the building were complaining to the landlord. I mean, we're talking, we're talking very serious dislike and explosions all the time. It was unbelievable.
So, when it comes to them, they had a very unique situation where they actually had somebody come in who was more of a life coach, and this person lived with them for like 3 or 4 days.
Yeah, literally in their house.
Moved in with them, and we were. Jack and I go a long way for our clients. We have yet to do that. I can't see us doing that at any point in time.
Not
very different, but unfortunately, in their case, they got to it a little bit too late, and neither the marriage nor the company survived it. So it's it can be very, very troublesome. There are other cases where that's not happened, and we'll dive into some of those when we come back here. So stay tuned. I'm Adam Stonhalter.
And I'm Jack Mancini with Maximum Value Partners. We're business coaches, as we've been talking about, and we help owners of small companies, 1 to 25 employees, get unstuck from a state of howl.
Stay tuned for more Dirty Secrets of Small Business on Integrity Radio, WINT 1330 AM, 101.5 FM, and online at WINTradio.com.